get started about coaching up in Eve, I'm a former rugby coach, I'm still a wrestling coach. My son wrestles. And everything I do in Eve is the linking between coaching in real life, athletics, and coaching up your team in Eve. DNS is nothing more than a team of individuals that we train up. We train up not only to survive in Eve, we train them up to learn how to make ISK, either through all the ways you make ISK in this game, and we've got quite a few. And then that individual comes together with us, and we create a team. We create that team based upon human aspects, not based upon in-game aspects, human aspects. I don't care if you own a Titan. I don't care if you own a mothership. I don't care if all you can fly is a stealth bomber, obviously. I care more about the human side of this game than I do about the spaceship side, because I'm a coach. And I'll get into that a little bit later on. But before I get into that, I'm going to play a 2-minute video. If you've ever been in DNS, my opening speeches before we go on campaign are legendary, usually filled with a lot of alcohol and ranting. But I have played this one on a few times. Could you roll our video, please? I only got one of these this year.
Great moments are born from great opportunity.
You shouldn't have any doubt in your mind about what you're supposed to do tonight and about how you're supposed to do it.
This is your time.
No, I don't want them to gain another yard.
We got to go out there and we got to take it.
Take their game and you shove it right back in their face.
That's how winning is done.
Team is something you belong to, something you feel, something you have to earn.
If we don't come together,
It's over.
And I guarantee a week won't go by in your life. You won't regret walking out, letting them get the best of it.
I'll ask you one last time.
to be the best that you can be.
Play like champions.
Win.
It's about heart. It's about who can go out there and play the hardest.
It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward.
I don't care what the scoreboard says at the end of the game. In my book, we're going to be winners.
In any fight, it's the guy who's willing to die,
willing to take the hits,
who's going to win that inch.
Let me tell you something you don't let anything, nothing, come between us.
On this team, we fight.
And we shut them down because we can.
I watch that video all the time because it's exactly what DNS is. All right, I'm not here to talk about DNS. I'm talking about the spirit of being the little guy. And right now, if you're just coming into EVE, if you're just joining the game, you have aspirations to build a corporation, you're up against it financially, whatever is there. You got to focus on what the little guy can do, all right? And I did that immediately. I had opportunity to build big. I chose not to because the little guy attracts more of the people that really care about the game. The little guy and being the underdog, you have a unique prowess that when you begin to understand the rule of possession and ownership, all right, and I'll go over that in a second, you can enjoy the game more than the big guy. And that spirit was born in me 18 years ago when I first started online gaming. DNS has been around since 1995. As you can see, that's one of my old rugby pictures. I'm about to come into a ruck and take the ball. And I found a way to transfer that spirit of comrade and friendship and teammate. And I found a place in EVE because this game produces that. So we are fighting the big guy. So how do you become special? How do you become something unique? It's easy, but it takes a lot of time. It takes, not necessarily, it's not like a job, but it takes a dedicated effort to always put your team first. As a coach, my goal was always to surround myself with people that understood that the goal is always to win. The goal is always to become that. Who's familiar with BASF? All right, in the United States, we have a commercial. We're not the big guy, but we make the big guy better. The minute I became that is the minute I realized there's a niche for us. Building a small corporation in Eve is easy, but conquering all of Eve, you got to play the game for 10 years to get there. You got to be there because the guys you're going up against have been here for 10 years. But to enjoy what they enjoy, you don't have to become them. You just got to understand where the chinks in the armor is. So I'm going to go over what I did and how I got there. When you first start out in Eve and you begin coaching or you begin doing what I did, owner, GM, and coach, that is what you are. You're going to own everything, the wins and losses. You're going to pay for everything as the owner. You're going to be responsible for getting the team on the field, and then you're going to be responsible for making the call. The object is to make sure you surround yourself. The difference is you're not dealing with athletes. You're dealing with people that I really had no clue about. My first 2 years of doing this, people don't know how I'm wired. Because I think when I play this game, I'm talking to people that have gone out and experienced that adrenaline rush of playing a sport. But I wasn't. And they would think I was crazy, and they'd quit on a regular basis. So I had to find a way to make a connection with them, because I'm a hell of a computer geek. All right, I love it. What I do for a living, people laugh at me. And I'm going to Iceland to party, but also to talk about computer stuff. But I first found a way to make that connection. And then I taught them the difference between team and being an individual. You learn and you train as an individual, but when it comes down to it, you play as a team. Become self-sufficient. Train yourself. As a wrestler, I was training all the time. And in Eve, I got people to understand how to go about training and becoming good at playing the game, becoming a good Eve player before they can go out and become a good teammate. No, you can't have my Jaeger bottle. Peter, come on. Okay, thank you. So when you begin to understand that in Eve, if you can become a good individual, you're going to become an awesome part of the team. Greatness is a lot of small things stacked together. The statement I teach everybody in DNS, it's brick by brick. All right? You're not going to build this tomorrow. We set goals and projections in DNS and Eve that last 6 to 12 months. And we work towards them. Not only training, but beginning to identify where we're going to be successful in the game. So that's what I looked like when I first started playing Eve. When I finally stepped out, those are all the things I had to do. Owner, GM, coach, recruiter, admin, keeper, offensive coordinator, marketing, logistics, members. That's all on you if you want to do it by yourself. I came into the game from another game. I had 12 people that joined me. I only have one of those guys left. So I broke them all out for you. But the cool part is we had a great game organizers that take care of the marketing. They take care of admin. You can now have forums, comms, all the things that we used to have to do back in the early 90s. They take care of that. And they bring people to you that want to be members. So I'm going to get rid of those. I'm going to talk about the 3 things that you need to really focus on, and I'm going to break that down even further. If everything's spelt wrong, I'm dyslexic and I can't type for shit, all right? Everyone knows me. I'm all verbal. So I want to get down to what I think is the #1 focus for anybody that really wants to develop a strong online organization. So I ask you, what's the most important asset in Eve? Last year when I asked that, Titans, ISK, space, flags, it was, the answers were all about Eve, but you're right. It's human beings. Recruit, recruit, recruit. Okay, you want to build a successful organization? have a belief in yourself first, all right? You got to be that out front guy. Some of you might not want to do that. Some of you might not want to breach and go into that direction. Then find somebody who wants to and become the logistics guy. Become all those other elements and support them because they're rare elements. Running an organization is not easy. Being a coach is not easy. Being the guy that is yelling, hugging, crying, and all the things that Eve produces is not easy. And when you surround yourself, you find a guy like that, my number one role is recruiting. So here are my 5 tips. I'm going to pass it over to the work. How are we doing on time? They need a clock somewhere. All right, 15. All right, great. Here are my tips for becoming an effective recruiter. Because once you begin to recruit and people begin to believe in you, in your leadership skills, they begin to take over those jobs. They begin to take over and look for things to do for you. So they begin to free you up because that guy, that coach, he's strictly designed to go out and produce a win. I don't care if it's mining or whatever it is. As a coach, I'm looking at how to win all the time. Winning isn't necessarily blowing up the other guy's ship. That's what I categorize as winning. But to others in Eve, it might be doing something else. So as you're recruiting as CEOs, somebody says, well, how come you're such a successful recruiter? I'm like, here are my steps. 1, verbal interviews only. I bring them on comms, and I introduce them to the cesspool that is DNS, all right? The plebe, who's familiar with the plebe process in any of the military academies or anything like that, or the freshmen or whatever it is, they come in, and I'm not saying we verbally abuse them as bad as the goons, all right? But my guys have a process for checking their mettle, all right? Always do verbal interviews. You receive an application in your organization that is some guy typing out some fancy stuff. You don't know if he's lying. But when you get good at listening to Eve players, you immediately can tell when somebody's lying and wants to take advantage of you, all right? Don't be overly aggressive. Always have verbal interviews. 2, ask questions in real life and in Eve. Now, a lot of people don't like to tell me about their real life, but it's one of the first things that I ask them. Where do you live? And then I write it down. Take notes. So when you ask questions also about Eve in real life, if that guy is very hesitant about telling you anything about his real life, I'm telling you this right now. You don't want him in your organization. We all want to guard ourselves, but what's the bad thing? You're on my team speak. I already know what country you're from. I have your IP. If you don't know how the internet works, I already know where you live. But I want you not to lie to me. Ask questions, take notes. Use your friends. You interview in front of your entire organization while you're in game. That way then they're taking notes, and as the guy leaves, we compare our notes. Did he make a mistake? Ask questions differently and see if you get the same answer over and over again. Repeat questions. Act stupid. Did I ask you where you're from? Okay? And see if they can produce the same answer. Because the one thing is when somebody begins to lie, what's that? The tangle web you weave, when at first you choose to deceive. They can't repeat it. They change it. All right? And even an evil place. I'm telling you, man. And the sad part is there's a lot of young corporations that get taken advantage of. Write down your spiel. And I kid you not, I have a 9-page recruiting spiel I go through. Be passionate about it. Be honest. And make sure that you drink. And then you get them to drink the Kool-Aid. And I'm going to end by saying this. Number 5, Aristotle said something a long time ago that I apply to my life. And if you've ever been in my recruiting spiel or part of my group, I apply this not only in-game, I apply this in my real life. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. I've been recruiting and saying the same thing for my organization, either in Eve or other games, for 18 years. And it is so ingrained when I show up at one of these events and my DNS guys, and God bless them, and I start into it, they buy me a beer to shut me up. And it's what I am and it's who I am. And that is what I want to share with you today, and then I want to pass this off to these guys. You're not up against it. It's not a ISK. ISK is easily received, all right? Finding good human beings, coming together and bonding up as a team, focusing in on what you want to accomplish, you're going to enjoy this game more. Networking and being part of the giant social network that is EVE, and getting out of, oh, it's just spaceships, this game becomes something surreal. And it's really fun from that point forward. And if you're not in an organization and you like the way this all sounded, please send me an email. You'll get the spiel right away. I want to introduce the Wormhole Kid. You just go. You're funnier than hell, so I'm going to sit down and enjoy this.
All right. Can I have my presentation, or? Well, I'm going to apologize up front. I managed to acquire a really obnoxious cough, so I'll try not to cough into the mic too much. All right. There we go. All right. So I'm going to start real quick. Nothing I tell you here is terribly complicated. Most of it is, in fact, common sense that, for whatever reason, does not seem to be terribly common in EVE. I'm not a coach in real life. I don't actually have a job yet. I'm 20, but I've spent 4 years as the CEO of my corporation. I joined it 1 month into EVE, became the CEO 2 weeks later, and I've had a pretty successful run. So I'm going to be talking about fairly general things that I think steps along the way that will help you get your corporation wherever you want to take it. This isn't Wormhole specific. I have experience only mainly with Wormhole Corps, but I've just been doing this for 4 years, so I think I can tell you what I've learned. So I'm going to start off right off the bat telling you why I think that it can be difficult to manage your EVE Corp. So I talk to a lot of people. How have you managed to get your corp to where you are? I do this in real life, and for some reason, I have difficulty, making this work. If you'd like to think of your corporation as your employees, you are paying them in entertainment. If your corporation is not fun, the environment that you've created, what you do is not entertaining, then you're doing it wrong. And they're not going to bother sticking around, all right? This isn't real life where maybe some of you are unfortunate enough that your work in real life does not excite you. You do it for money, paying for rent, it's something you have to do. Nobody comes to play EVE in your corp because it's what they have to do. So if they're not enjoying themselves, they are going to leave quite quickly. I mean, I'll show you just in my next slide exactly what I mean, but EVE players come from everywhere. I don't know if every country, lots of countries, time zones, jobs, you've got a little bit of everything in there. And at least my corp has people from all over in it. So you've got a lot of different stuff you're working with. There is no, this is how you do it, it will work. Everything I tell you in this presentation, I am not saying this is the right way, and I might say sometimes I don't do it this way, or I think this is a poor way of doing it. You can prove me wrong for all you care. I'm just telling you, this is how I've done it, and I'm also not going to promise if you copy me it'll work, because sometimes I think my good looks let me slip right through. But so you are going to find that people in your corporation have all kinds of varying levels of competence. You're going to have some people that are dumb as a brick in your corp, perhaps. How they've managed to stay in EVE, I don't know. You're going to find some people that are socially awkward and probably don't talk to people outside of their bedroom. You're going to manage to make them talk on TeamSpeak, or maybe you're not, but you're going to try. So in my corporation, I have a lot of different jobs here. I've got a Polish stockbroker. I have a plumber. I have a surgeon. I didn't write plumber, but I have people in the military. I have a tree surgeon. You guys are smart. I have a surgeon. I have English majors that I don't know why, but he's annoying and he's convinced he'll have a job when he graduates. He won't, but he can keep thinking that. I have police officers. I've got students, bartenders, paramedics, mathematicians, and race car drivers. Now, what do they all have in common? They're going to kill you if you run into my corp in Wormhole space. All of them. But it takes something to take these people from all these different jobs and make them all do the same thing. And it's a lot easier said than done, because you have to treat them all differently. So, but I'm going to move on to a bit. I'm going to walk you through what I think are steps in your career as a CEO or a director, taking your idea, your corporation, and growing it. My corp is not huge. I am not a nullsec alliance. My corporation, I have taken from 8 to 230 people over the span of several years. I think that's good growth. That's been carefully measured at times and not at others. And I'm going to go over some of the places that you might be able to escape mistakes I've made and places where I think you can make mistakes. Right from the beginning, we're going to pretend you're just founding your corporation. First, I have found, and this is where you can disagree, that if your corporation is focused on a part of Eve, you will do better. Nothing makes your corp die quicker than saying, we're going to mine, run missions, do wormholes, we're going to do some nullsec, PvP, oh, and we lowsec roam too. We do everything, so that's why you should join. You are going to get nowhere, probably. It just doesn't work. I run a wormhole corp. We do wormholes, and that's it. People will come, they know what they're expecting, they do that, and it's good. If you try to spread yourself over lots of things, you're probably going to have a bad day. You might make it work, but I've very rarely seen it achieved. And far more corps I've talked to, they're struggling just to get past 10 people or cover more time zones. That's why they're trying to do too much. Know what you are capable of. You are a small group. You probably start off maybe a bunch of real-life friends. Maybe you're just a couple buddies. Whatever the case be, know that's what you are. Your logo doesn't matter, all right? You can all be like, our logo is badass. Well, you spent 3 hours wasting your time on your logo. My corp's logo is a red circle on a background, and it's bigger and better than yours. So obviously it's not that important. Focus on one time zone. I don't care if you have, excuse me, an American, a British guy, and a Russian, and you decide that that's enough to call your corp round-the-clock coverage. It's not. The easiest way to struggle to grow your corp is to try to pull people into a time zone that you are ill-equipped to manage. I have seen it myself. Finally getting my mostly American corp to have a European presence was really hard. If you lie and tell people that they're joining and you've got a strong time zone that you don't, they're going to join, they're going to see no one online, and they're going to leave. It's hard. The easiest way we managed to do it, and this may or may not work for you, is we just took an entire corp from that time zone, killed them, and told them they can have their stuff back if they join it and do it in my corp, and it worked. So, far too many people start right off, excuse me, by trying to delegate stuff. All right, I got 5 people, time to start picking my officers, I got my directors. That's probably not necessary at the beginning. Most corps are going to start off as a one-man show. I had a director, he's up there, he's still useless, but he's been a director the whole time, but he never does anything. So when do you start delegating? It's an important decision, because when do you want to start your staff? If you start too early, and you've got a bunch of officers with nobody to manage, I believe the phrase is a whole bunch of chiefs, but not enough Indians, it's pointless. Vice versa, you will inhibit your corp growth if you don't have the leaders to keep up with them. So I personally think the very first thing that, especially as a CEO or a director with your very small leadership, you want to delegate is recruiting. It can be very time intensive, and you're going to want to start looking at other things. When you start to feel that you're spending a lot of time and a lot of your effort is going into just managing your corp, that is the time to start picking a couple people to do it. Start with people that have been with your corp for a while. If you want to, mold them into what you need them to be. Help teach them, coach them up, develop your members, and you will do a lot better. Also, while you're doing this though, think about how you want your corp to be run. What infrastructure do you imagine your corp being as it gets larger? Because it's a lot easier to slowly move in the right direction than speed through and go, crap, our infrastructure is awful, and try to reorganize the whole thing with it already there. So, this is the vicious cycle that's apparently slightly cut off of delegation. You don't have enough time, so you're going to delegate somebody to do it, but no one in your corp is competent at doing it, so you're going to try to teach them, but then you don't have enough time to teach them. It's hard, and this happens. I've got people in positions, that are not very good at what they do, but that's why I put them in a job that's not exactly very important. Don't tell them that. But they can afford to screw up, and life will continue as we know it. So, I'm going to take a break from my little growth line here and talk about taxes, because this is another place that I see a lot of corporations get it wrong. Your corporation doesn't need to have taxes. I'm not going to tell you don't. My corp has taxes. I'm also not going to tell you that taxes are the savior. Think about your taxes, though. I can tell you from firsthand experience, nothing will make your corp hate you more than that one person that suddenly decides they care where their tax money is going, and suddenly everybody accuses you of stealing their money. That is when you remind them, you are not stealing their money. You need to take it to run their corp. They don't need to know that most of it goes to things besides running the corp, but they just need to know it's important. So, but transparency, I think, a lot of this is very opinionated, but I think it's important that if you're going to have a budget, if you're going to tax people, just tell them where it goes. Nothing will cause problems quicker than just being, we tax 20%. What do you do with my tax money? Stuff. That'll piss people off. Some people, shut up. Some people don't care. Some people do care, but it can and will cause problems if you, I think it will at least, if you just don't tell them. Have a budget if you want. My corp does, but we just tell them straight up, this goes here, this goes here, goes to the I do whatever I want with fund. So keep it simple. And down here, Taggart Transdimensional is an example of a corp that has absolutely no corporate structure at all. I don't think it works. They make it work somehow. On the flip side, you've got socialism. You don't make any money. We have this giant corp structure. You probably want it somewhere in between, but you want to give it some thought, because it's a lot easier to build into it when you have it planned out than just try to start making your corp taxes and structure. So infrastructure is important. Hopefully yours is more stable than that. But at the same time, you want to develop it as you need it. Don't make a bunch of jobs just to make it look pretty, because having a bunch of people in positions that do nothing looks stupid, and people are going to call you out on it. As your corp grows, you're going to need to create positions to help delegate so that you're not doing nothing except manage your corp, because that's not terribly fun. But at the same time, if you're going to make positions, responsibility needs to come with power. If you are in charge of doing this, they need to have the authority to take care of it. I have people who are, I've got FCs, they have the permission and ability to punish the people that are being idiots, so that when they go and Derpa Herp 1 whelps the entire fleet because he goes AFK while he's insisting that nothing's at the POS and it loses my Moros that I talked about in the Alliance panel, I know exactly whose fault it is. And at the same time, I have found a very simple way to make your corp run smoother is to separate administrative leadership and operational leadership. My directors, most of them are not terribly competent FCs. They're people that I trust, that I can trust with my, yeah, like you. They run the corp. They manage the back end, the finances, you know, the freighting ice fuel around because we have got way too many POSs. And then you have the FCs. If you assume and always want your people to be both, you're not going to find a lot. I've got some great FCs that I would not trust with our corp wallet. So your corp's growing. It's getting a bit bigger. Don't grow too fast. If you want a bigger corp, great. But nothing is going to also ruin your corp quicker than pulling in a whole bunch of people and then not having the infrastructure to manage it. Grow carefully. I'm not going to say slowly. I'm just going to say carefully. If you grow too fast, growing pains you when you realize I have 3 guys to help me manage the corp and there's 50 of them, and that's not a great ratio. It might be. For depending on what your corp is, that might be good, but it won't fly in my corp because they'll manage to kill each other. If you have too many leaders, then it depreciates their value and importance. If you don't have enough, it's going to inhibit corp growth. I, for the longest time, did not have enough directors in my corp, and it really stifled where we could go because stuff just wasn't getting done quick enough. I was way too hesitant to pick new directors, and as a result, my corp flatlined for a while because we just couldn't get stuff done. People would join, but people would leave. And you just need to keep up with that. Staying on track. Time to evaluate your corp's leadership direction. So, as you grow, as you get there, just take some time to look and make sure you're where you are where you're going. It's a lot easier to take slight changes if you don't think you like where you're headed than it is to turn the entire corp around, because that can be hard. If you have,
tell me I'm fired.
No. But if you have incompetent leaders, you need to move them out of that role. If you want, you horizontally promote them to this great new position that manages nothing, so they don't feel like they got fired, like him. But you just need to do that. So, and finally, I would say this is a rule that I've been taught generally. If you think someone is capable of doing something 80% as efficient as you, give them the shot to do it. Developing your members into leaders will make your job easier, and delegation is a lot easier when I can just hand stuff off knowing he'll get it done. So, large and odd words, I would say focus on your corp tools. As your corp grows, your ability to communicate and manage is what's going to limit how big you can grow. Not what you're doing and not where you are, but more so how well you can manage your corporation. So focus on keeping that communication well. If you want to get orders from top to bottom, make sure that those channels exist. It's a lot easier than just go and say, all right, people, this is what we're doing. That might fly, it might not, but just keep that in mind. There you go, done. I never actually timed it, so I don't know how long it's going.
If you could bring up my slide with or just bring mine back up, I'm going to put it up there so you can reference those areas. And Argus is going to talk about his organization that.
I turned it off, so I don't know if something has to be done.
You broke it.
I did turn it back on.
There it is. There it is.
So.
Introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
So I hate you for having me follow him because I'm really not funny at all. And it's good that I have no slides because, as my corp members would tell you, it would be a wall of text about 10 slides long. So I liked, once I start typing, I can't stop. It just keeps going. So I'm Argus Soren, Anthony Rosania in real life, and as Black kind of incorrectly said, I'm an emergency room physician in Newark, New Jersey. And those of you who know the Northeast of the United States know that that's a big gun and knife capital. And so we're quite busy. And so when Black kept trying to call me last week, I ignored his calls because I knew he was going to bug me about this, and I did not have the time to make slides. I was a coach for 10 years, too, and then now an ER physician for 9. And honestly, what I do in the ER is not all that different from what I did as a coach. I manage a group of people, a very diverse group of people, residents, techs, nurses, and while they're not my direct employees, it's important for me to keep them on task. People show up just like they show up to your corp with various backgrounds, various assumptions about what they're supposed to do. Some are more motivated than others. Some have had a bad day. Some haven't slept, and at least in the ER, most of them aren't drunk, so that kind of helps. So the guy who taught me to coach, you know, the first thing he ever said to me, and his name was Carl McGowan, and he actually helped coach the national volleyball team, the men's national volleyball team. And the first thing he ever said to me was, coaching is about relationships. And one of the first things I noticed about Eve that kind of hold me and Brad together and I think draws us together is Eve is about relationships, right? It's not about ISK. It's not about, you know, space. It's not about sovereignty. It's about your relationship with your corp members. And I would say that I would even change the asset part to say, hey, you know what? Your best asset isn't just your members. It's your relationship with them. It's the memories that you create with them. Because if you ever ask people about their corp, the time they get the most impassioned is the time they tell you about that big fight or the big thing that happened. And it's the people that were there, right? It's that whole I was there thing, as corny as that is, that kind of drives Eve and makes it different and brings us here to Iceland, of all places, which I don't tell people at work why I come to Iceland. So they're actually filming a television show for ABC, New York Med. You know about it?
No, I got you on TV.
Oh no, they're filming one like in my ER, and they want to know all about why I'm going to Iceland. I'm like, I'm not going to tell ABC why I'm going to Iceland in the emergency department. So you'll forgive me if I have no voice, but it's been a rough 3 days. So it was actually really just a rough Tuesday, and I'm still recovering. So I think what I want to focus on is not this in-game stuff and the things that make people a successful coach or a successful team leader. How many of you are leaders in your corporations? Raise your hands. Okay. How many of you are CEOs? Okay. And where are people from 00, high sec? Where are you from? Raise your hand if you're null sec people. All right. Raise your hand if you're low sec people. And how about empire people? Get out of there, man. It's scary. Really, I go to Jita and I'm like, there's too many people in local. I'm like an Eve agoraphobic. Wormholes. Yes, there's no local. I also fell for the no local, the Matani.com joke. I sent it out to my entire alliance telling them how great it was. And I haven't lived it down yet. So Eve is about relationships. And the thing that really strikes me is the thing you need to do, or the important things you need to do when you have a corp, and he kind of hinted at some of them. You need to do them day one. And if you do the right things day one, the rest of this is so easy. My corp has been going on for 6 years. And by the way, I delegate everything. We're on every time zone. And so I don't know. It still works. So, but, you know, no, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't know. It's like you said about Taggart. It's like Taggart has no organization. I abhor organization. The first thing, anytime anyone posts a hierarchy or a table of organization to my forums, I take it down. Because once you assign directors to certain roles, they get focused on that role. And you really need people that can work across all areas of Eve. But what I really wanted to talk about, and I did have an outline in my head, so I will try not to digress, is things that make you a good leader in real life and things that make you a good coach, things you need to do from day one. And I find the most important one is tone, right? If you start off with the right tone, if you start off with the kind of tone that these guys do, and you're all about the person, and you make that person feel important, you'll be successful. If you're berating, if you're tough on them, it's going to be a lot harder. So you need to have the right tone early on, and you need to set expectations. And I think that's the biggest one. I think when people don't know what you expect of them, they don't know what to expect of your corp, they get scared when things start to go a little awry. Because corps and Eve don't fail simply because the CEO is bad. They fail because they hit some crisis. And the members of the corp get really fucking worried during the crisis, and they start freaking out. They forget that it's a game, and they forget that, you know, all we got to do is make adjustments to whatever's going on. So you lose your sovereignty or somebody kills your POS. The next thing you know, everybody's leaving your corp. And the reason they're doing that, does anyone have water? Or beer? Yeah, I'll take some beer. Yeah, Jaeger would be great.
Keep going.
So the reason they're doing that is because they don't know what to expect. They don't know that you're going to have a plan in mind. So you got to set expectations at both the team and the individual level. And then you got to make sure that people understand the consequences for not meeting expectations. And, you know, so you can't have a director that's going to do nothing, but you also can't fly off the handle at them when they don't do it if you've never told them what's expected of them. And recently we've run into a bunch of things where I've started to do that, and so it's kind of put my mind on this stuff. That if they know what you expect of them, and you apply consequences when they don't, nobody's got hard feelings. And I think then once you have those core things, you set the right tone, you have expectations, people know the consequences for not meeting them, then you need to build a strong internal compass. You really need to decide inside your corp, with you and your members, what success in Eve means to you. You can't let the outside influences affect that. You need to decide it's our relationships, it's the experiences we have together that we value, and we find that successful. And then when shit happens, if you're actually working together to solve it, it becomes enjoyable to wade through that shit, rather than oh my God, I'm gonna focus on the shit. And the most area where I see that, especially in 0-0 people, and this is what I try to emphasize in my corp, is with sovereignty. If you don't have a strong internal focus, and you take Sov, your focus becomes all about Sov. And the next thing you know, you lose the Sov, as we know, that can happen to anyone, and your corp doesn't have any idea what they're doing because their entire purpose has been lost. Their entire purpose was built around Sov. Their identity became around Sov. So now you have no identity, you have no purpose. So it's really important to stay focused on that internal compass and make sure you understand what's important, and you constantly emphasize that with your people, that they know that we're not in this for this Sov. We're in this for, the Sov brings us things. Sovereignty gets us ISK, it gets us experiences, but it's not the end all be all. It's the experiences we share through that. And it's really about content generation. It's about having stuff to do together, and you can get that anywhere. Question? No. Oh, okay. Oh. So that was basically the things that I wanted to focus on, is that not so much the Eve. Get away from the Eve and really focus on the relationships. Make sure your tone is positive all of the fucking time. And make sure you're really you know, that you're delivering a clear message, people know what the expectations are, and really build that internal compass. Really decide, you know, what is success in Eve to you, so that you're not, you know, thrown off kilt when a failure takes place, when some outward stuff, because that outward stuff penetrates very strongly. So I don't know if you had questions for me. I know there's some. Yeah.
Let's give a hand for Argus stepping up. So at this time, what I want to do is I'm going to walk around and be Mike Boy. If you have any questions, you just raise your hand. I'll pass the mic to you, and we'll freely answer all the questions. I want to focus not on the fun stuff that is Fanfest. If you have a question about, you know, what'd you do if you ever experienced this? Because I promise you, your experiences we've all faced, and you've heard a consistent tone: relationship, purpose, structure, organization, internal compass. They're all saying the same thing. So does anybody have any questions? Go right here. All right. I got you next.
So I've been CEO of my Corp for about 6 months now, and I actually came to the CEO position when we bumped off a glass ceiling. We'd grown perhaps a little too fast, and then a schism developed in the leadership, and we actually, in essence, spawned a second corporation. And it's a problem we keep hitting. There seems to be glass ceilings around. Sometimes in TeamSpeak or voice comms, you can only have so many people in one channel, or you end up with sort of sub-communities developing within a corporation. How do you deal with that sort of almost cancerous things happening, sort of communities becoming tumors and sort of spawning off from the main group? How do you keep them unified?
Do you want?
You know, I think that, I mean, do you have a person or an individual that's creating that? I mean, I think that if people are creating cliques, you need to address that. And I think often those cliques arise, I find, because somebody's unhappy with the situation. And there are times where you need to kind of pull the unhappy person aside and really kind of get down to the nitty-gritty about why they're unhappy. One of the unique things about Eve is that people don't just leave when they're not happy. They feel the need to infect your entire organization with that. And I don't want to be up here and be like, hey, you should kick everybody that's unhappy. But that you need to address it early on. You need to speak with them. And is this something I can address? Is this something where I can bring things together and maybe sort this out? Or is this something where I got to really kind of like nip this in the bud? You know, I find the most important thing is that you build a strong core leadership around you. You need solid people you can trust. And then the growth, you're going to grow, and then you're going to shrink. And all corps do that, and they get really nervous when they go through the shrinkage cycles. But those are a necessary part of Eve. As long as you keep recruiting, like Brad said, you're going to keep growing. You have to keep recruiting, because if you don't recruit in Eve, you are going to fail. You're going to get smaller and smaller and smaller until there's no corp, because attrition is always there. But I think that if you know who your core are and you build that loyalty, that'll protect you from this massive growth, because it won't be a panic situation when you do shrink down. That, and I think just corp activities that bring people together, you know, and that's the other aspect. The TeamSpeak aspect, I don't know that I have an answer for you other than a bigger TeamSpeak. But you know, you can use eVoice. You know, CCP gives us the tools to kind of work around some of these things now that are great. And then, you know, so if it's a matter of bringing people together, yeah, you plan some corp activities. But if it's a matter of there's individuals that are creating it, then you need to address those individuals directly.
Thank you. Okay, we're a mid-sized corporation based in Nullsec. We've set up some doctrines, some fleet doctrines, and we're trying to tell people to train for these doctrinal ships. You have a few choices, and then we have the tools for our FCs to know what they're flying and what they're doing. We have a few people who don't want to train those doctrines, and they say things like, I pay to play this game, I'll play it the way I want, I'll train whenever I want to. How do you guys address that situation?
Well, I would say we experienced fairly similar things in my corporation. To be blunt, I would say get rid of them.
Yeah, I'm a coach. You're part of a team. You can't run your own play. to accomplish the goal, you gotta become part of the team. And I'm all about that. Being an individual is fine, all right? But the individual, you can't put a baseball player and make him play frickin' middle linebacker, all right? You can't take a guy and teach who's a swimmer and put him on a proper football field and have him go down and properly defend or score goals, all right? By the way, my daughter was a very good football player, but I did coach also that. So anyways, you can't do any of that stuff, and you're right. It's a matter of saying, what benefit are you giving them? And I first leverage that benefit, and if they don't follow through, go find somebody else to suck on their tit, because you ain't doing it with me. We're going to focus as a team. And it was easy for me because in Black Ops, for you to have fun, you got to go through the Sino. I mean, it's easy, all right? And they show up in a ship that can't go through the Sino. I'm going, huh,
so you just let them show up?
No,
you bring your Drake, it's okay?
I first let them pay their dues, and then I tell them, all right, we don't want you. No, I don't do that.
Can I ask you, how long has your Corp been in existence? When did you decide to use doctrines? Okay. So yeah, I think that your Corp mates have no excuse. You know, one of the things I think about this whole idea of an internal compass is the great thing about it, when you build it up and your Corp has this direction it's going, and notice I use the idea of a compass. I don't use the idea of goal setting, because goals are way out here. The compass is right here, and it's guiding me to my goals, and I am looking at it all of the time. And if you do that and you build that up, one of the problems with it, just so you see, so the other CEOs know, is if you try to change the direction that you want to go with that compass, it's really hard to do, because your members now have expectations. They know the consequence. You have a certain tone. So I would say the only way I would disagree with saying, hey, look, you got to learn the concepts or I'm going to kick you, is if, you know, that's something you really need to think about. If, you know, you run a Corp that's not heavily doctrinized for 2, 3, 4 months, I mean, years, like mine, and then all of a sudden you decide to go doctrinized. For us, the experience was we are now really consider ourselves focused on PvP. But we have not always been a PvP Corp, and I have people in my Corp that have been there for 5 years, and they don't PvP. I'm not going to kick those people from my Corp. So then the challenge for me becomes, how do I still incorporate them into the experience? How do I make them feel included? Because if you try to, and that's what I have them do. I get them on recruiting, I get them on logistics, I get them on all of the administrative tasks, and they embrace it. They absolutely embrace it. I got a guy in the back who never plays Eve. He does all of my programming. And he's a superstar, and our Corp wouldn't exist without him.
Would you point him out? I need
Arrow,
one of those.
stand up. Arrow, stand up.
I need one.
I call him the wizard.
Okay. I have a name for that guy. We call him Q. And if you ever watched James Bond, I got one of them.
Okay. You can't have mine.
No, I got one. When you find them, you don't let go. You understand?
He is more important than
That's
any
right.
FC I have.
I call him Q. That's what I'm talking about recruiting. My guy like that, I kid you not, I flew into Philadelphia. He picked me up. I stayed at his house. He drove me to New York. I got on the plane and flew over here. He'll be picking me up and driving me back to Philadelphia to fly home. And he came to Fanfest last year. This year he couldn't come. But that's, when you find one of them, now, believe me, you don't ever piss off Q, all right? Any other questions? All right. What time are we at right now? 5 minutes? All right.
I don't think anything's right after this.
Yeah, we have an hour for the keynote, or it's right after? Oh, it's right after.
I'm Doctor Who from TLC, The Last Chances. This is Scott, CEO. The Wormhole Kid knows us. We've been in a C6 Wormhole for 8 years, so 6, 7 years. It's very similar to the question that you just raised a minute ago. We have from time to time people coming in and out. How? I'm going. All right. So what I'm saying is, how do you get what we call the Care Bear blood out of somebody that, you know, we obviously do PvP a lot, and we get the other member that comes along that just he won't, as he says in Top Gun, he won't engage, yeah?
All right, so I would say a careful distinction is, if you're recruiting Care Bears still, you're probably doing it wrong. It should be quite obvious to everybody that you are recruiting that you're a PvP Corp. If they're coming in expecting to just run sites and not have to come out and PvP with you, you know, that's its own thing. Getting them to start PvPing with you can be difficult. In my Corp, I do have people that don't come PvP with us often. I just steal their tax money and leave it at that. But, so, I mean, if you if it's important to you that they really are PvPing constantly, then you just tell them, you're going to start PvPing or you're going to find somewhere else. If that's what you want to do. Otherwise, I would say you really can't make them come out and roam with you guys. If they're in your Corp, they're well liked, you just got to leave them. And, or figure out why they don't want to PvP and see if you can fix that. I don't usually have a problem getting my guys to want to go kill people, though. So,
I'm going to cut him short. We're up against the EVE keynote. Listen, if you have any more questions, we'll be there. That's not only us. Find those EVE leaders they're all over here. Don't be afraid to talk to them and get their ideas. I did that at my first FanFest, and we did a lot of that. So
I am at Argus Soren on Twitter, so you can.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. I hope you guys got something out of this. Enjoy FanFest.
You can find me if you have questions. I'm sure the CCP doors aren't actually going to open for half an hour like